set up here. And yeah, if you can shut that light off, that'd be great. That helps with the eyes. Hopefully everyone can still see me out there, whoever's tuned in live. But we're talking about you got to squeeze the grape to get the wine. And that is kind of something I want to talk about. But there's an underlying theme here. We're going to be working in Psalm 27 at a certain point today. We need to have a fearless trust in God. A fearless trust in God. To throw away everything that is given to us. People say, oh, you need to do this, you have to do that. Oh, God. How many times have we had the foolishness going on of like somebody dies and God says, oh, God wanted to take him home, or God wanted to punish you. What foolishness. What foolishness we live in. We need to go to a great God who is great and just, and to trust in him. But there's a certain thing we have to understand. When I talk about you got to squeeze the grapes to get the wine, that's true. Everyone knows that. But if you are a sour, moldy grape person, you're going to have a sour, moldy wine that gets squeezed out of you. So when you're squeezed, it depends on what's being squeezed. The Adam nature is sour and moldy. If that's all that is in you, when you're in a trial and pressing, it's not going to have the same result in you as if you have Jesus Christ inside. Because in that is sweet and pure. And when that is squeezed in you, then you're going to have sweet and pure wine. And that's something God sometimes calls us poured out wine, and we'll talk about that. You might be the refreshing for someone else. You might be the help for someone else in that. So I really, in all of this, when you say something like, you got to squeeze the grapes to get the wine, I don't want us discouraged. Our message today is one of encouragement, is one of trust in God. And it is so, so powerful. And I have a little thing to follow along here, and some of you can see it, some of you can't. It's really okay. Just hear what the word of the Lord has today. But as the world squirms, do you? I want to look at a couple of things. The world is a bit unstable today, but the world's always been unstable because the Adam nature's been around from the beginning. It started a long time ago. Cain killed Abel. Right from the very beginning, after the separation from God, there is an instability. Our country, I have lived long enough to see this, it's suffering somewhat of a moral decline. In the culture, not in our hearts and our souls, but in those things that are around us. The books, the videos, the movies, the video games, the language, the attitude toward Christians. There's an awful lot that's going on in our country that wasn't going on in the country in the abundance that it is right now. These things have always gone on. People have always come against the things of the Lord. But it's starting to come into the center of our culture and be acceptable. I heard something the other day that somebody, they called Vice President Pence a Christian dictator or something along that way. I forget exactly what the word was used, and I'm going, what? If you're a Satan worshiper, it's accepted. If you're an atheist, it's accepted. You have to be inclusive. If you live a life totally against every single thing that God gave directions for a pure and a holy and a wonderful life, if you say, all that stuff is accepted. But if you stand on the principles of God, you're a racist and a bigot. This is ridiculous. How did that get turned around? God is full of grace. God is full of mercy. God is full of forgiveness. I read something in a devotional this morning, and it was talking about when Jesus and the disciples, when they came, they brought a new and living way. They brought a new message. There was sweetness to it. It wasn't all of the demanding, demeaning legalism that was going on. They talked about grace and mercy and love and forgiveness. They were living it. It was totally different. What Jesus brought was like a little spray of room freshener, a little spray of perfume. It made things sweeter and smell better. And somehow that's turned around, that somehow Christians today, instead of spraying perfume, they're spraying Rape. It's like kill the bugs. How did it get turned to that? We serve a God of mercy. We need to have that flowing out from us, not an acceptance of sin. God never accepted what is wrong, what is against his holiness and his purity. But he always loved those who didn't know that, who didn't live that. It's always that fine line. My acceptance of you is not an endorsement of your behavior. That behavior, once you have the inclusion of Christ in your life, will change. So I don't need to be banging someone on the head over their behavior. I need to pray for them. I need to be the light of truth from God that he can make the change in their life. Instead of setting up groups of rules, you got to do this, you got to do that. I had one of our cadets came to me one time. We were on a field activity. We're staying overnight for a weekend in the field, and he came up to me and he said, I just want you to know, I'm an atheist. And so I just continued my conversation with him, and he had a few questions, and God was giving him truth. I wasn't pounding something into his head, and he was so appreciative. He said, I talked to a pastor a few weeks ago, and when I told the pastor I was an atheist, he said the conversation stopped, and he pointed at me and said, you are going straight to hell. I'm going, oh, that's a great way to have a conversation with a confused young person. How did it change to that? Such terror, such judgment, such anger. Jesus never did that. He will squeeze the grapes, but he never did that to people. Those that were throwing the stones at the adulteress, he didn't throw another law on them. What wisdom? Okay, any of you who have not sinned, you throw the first stone. Click, click, click. Whoa. Unbelievable. And then he didn't let the woman off who was in adultery, which is wrong and incorrect and impure for a lot of spiritual reasons, not just some sort of legal reason. He just said to her, you, go and sin no more. He didn't say, you wicked witch, you terrible dirty slob. He didn't do that. We are to have God's love, God's grace, and God's mercy come out, because there's a lot of squeezing going on out there. There's a lot of pressures that are going on. The war in the Middle East remains a threat. A lot that's often in the news and whatever. There are some dangers in our world, but this is nothing new. Back in the times of Jesus, you'd be eaten by a panther or something. The bears would come out and eat the children. I mean, there's always a danger. There's always something that we need God's protection. We need his wisdom. We need his guidance. Our immigration situation is out of control, and that includes terrorists. I'm not going to get into immigration debate. You got to work it out. Every country's got to work out what they got to work out. It goes on and on and on. So do you feel squeezed in all this? Could you give me the next slide, please? Oh, I'm sorry. We're on the next slide. Thank you. No, I'm good. I'm good. Go back to the other one. Oh, there you go. It's working. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Are you in the right place?
I'm in the right place here. But I just want to have us think on a few things here. Now, don't use your broken thinker with the Adam nature. Put on the mind of Christ as we go over some of these things. I hear a lot of people shaking a fist at God. God, where are you? You're so bad. How can you let babies die? How can you let war happen? How can you let all this stuff happen? God is not doing this. God is a God of mercy. He has not crushed us. I always joke and say, be glad I'm not God, because I'd be standing there with a smoking gun and everybody on the planet would be dead, and I go, anything else stupid you people want to say or do? Man's evil nature, which many people, they just refuse to believe that they're born broken. They refuse to believe that they're born broken. They are separate from God and his holiness and his purity and his rightness because of what Adam did. They are restored because of what Jesus did. It's not a belief system, it's a truism. And it's up to each individual to find that out. Don't seek religion, seek relationship. And if you don't know it and understand it, humble yourself for a minute and say, okay, whatever this God thing is, whatever this Jesus thing is, I do see a lot going on even in my own life. I'm coming before whatever you are. I need you to help me. I need you to be real to me. With a humble heart, God will give you what you lack and what you need to know. People are confused because God is not stopping everything that's wrong. But God did something else. Not just make human beings, but he gave everyone a free will. He had to. He absolutely had to give us a free will. Because without free will, there can be no justice. He cannot be perfectly just and perfectly good without that entity of free will. You have to have a choice. You are not a robot. The only way you can show that you love God is to obey God. You can't give him a watch or a Rolex or a Rolls Royce. You can't give him anything to show love except that obedience. And by you obeying God, it automatically is worship. Because you are admitting that he is God and not you. It's so powerful. But there is a reason. There are many things God will not allow. If it's going to mess up his plan for you, his plan for the universe, it's not going to happen. But all of these things, he does not cause evil. But because he has not stopped some of it, that means he's doing something with it. I look back on the history of our country. And things were going kind of crazy. You get the flapper girls, the bathtub gin, and all this stuff. All these, the immoralities that were changing from a little stronger basic Christian life. And what happened? The depression. A depression. God didn't punish us with a depression. But because he didn't stop it, what it did was it opened the eyes of many and turned many to God. And then right after that was World War II. My gosh. That pulled our country together. That pulled people to prayer. It did something in souls, even though there was a horror that went on. After 9/11, some of our young people weren't even born then. I talked to the cadets. I go, how old were you at 9/11? They say, I wasn't anything old. I wasn't even born. They don't understand the power and the magnitude of that. But in that, at least for a few moments, we came together as a country and we honored God. I remember seeing the video of the members of Congress standing on the steps in the Capitol singing, God Bless America. Wow, wow, wow. What that problem is. There we go. But in all of that, God individually was squeezing some grapes. He was individually doing some things, breaking down some people because we are so full of pride and not even realizing it. Now, God has gifted many of us in different ways. God has given me gifts, and I give them back to him in the things that I do. But in the things, if you're good at what you do, you better be careful because God's going to have to squeeze some of those grapes to get some wine. He's going to have to do that. And I can remember in my own life, I was very good at nursing. And I was very good at teaching it. And I was up at a local college teaching nursing years and years ago. And I can remember my lab coat, I just came back from making assignments at the hospital early in the morning. I was walking across one of the student areas there. And I remember thinking, God, I love my job. At the time, it was good money. I had the summers off. I was playing tennis at lunch. I was getting ready to make a decision on getting my doctorate in nursing. Oh, I had my life all planned out. Oh, yeah. I had a cold feeling come over me. I said, oh, God. Because when I said, I love this job, I think I was saying I love who I am in that job. Now, God made a few twists and turns. I ended up out of that job. I'm not going to get into all the details. I ended up working for a cleaning company and mowing lawns for about 6 or 8 years. And God took some things out of me. He humbled me because he doesn't want us to think we're the God. He gave us the gifts. Humility is not walking around with your head down. Humility is knowing you're gifted, but knowing where the gifts come from. Now, God has a unique way of shaping us and forming us. if you're squeezed by him, you can count on some really good things coming for you. You sometimes get squeezed by your own foolish decisions. But even in that, God will take care of it, even in our own mistakes. Remember in Romans 8:28, all things work for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. So it's almost like you can't make a mistake. Do not be afraid to trust God. But seek him with all your heart, that it would be his wisdom that is the foundation of all of your works and your decisions. But even when you don't hear him, even when you are rebellious, even when something does go wrong, continue to go back to him, because he'll make something good out of what we have messed up. Young people, as they're learning to cook and stuff, they'll make a little dish, but it didn't kind of come out quite right. So the mom will come by, or the dad who knows how to make it, they'll add a little something here and add a little something there. Man, that thing's really good. And that's what God does. We can make a stew of our lives, and it really doesn't taste very good. God says, let me add a little bit of this. Let me put a little bit of that in there. Let me put it back in the oven for a little longer. Those are the kind of things we see in our everyday lives. How much more magnified is that when it is the things of the Lord? Now, I just want to remind us of the vision I had about the end times. We're seeing a lot of things go on in our lives. I had a vision, it's been probably about a year now, where I was standing in front of this huge, big wooden door. I mean, it wasn't just big, it was big. It was like, 20 feet tall, 20, 30 feet thick or something. It was huge. It looked like the door to, one of those old castles, but it was huge. There was nothing going to knock that door down. And then I saw all the things that are happening in the end times. People have been talking about the end times forever, but all of these things have not happened at one time. The Shemitahs and the blood moons and some of the things that are going on in our world. It's all wrapped up, and I saw the Lord take all of those end time signs, wrapped them up, rolled them up into this huge log, and then he banged down that door. That door opened up wide, and I was standing there, right there, where that thing had opened, and what I heard was, this is the beginning of the end time. Now, whether it's 5 or 500 years, I don't know. I don't think it's 500, but everyone's been saying the end times, end times, end times. This is the beginning of the end times. So expect some things to happen. We need to be prepared. There's some things right now, I'm not saying to run out and be a prepper. I'm not talking about that. But right now, for today, be in control of your money. Know what you're doing. Don't be throwing it away. What if a time comes of real pressures, of real economic pressures, and you've thrown it all away? Buy less pizza. Go to less movies. I mean, do something that you can have God's wisdom in what you need to do for your own provision. So like, when we know a hurricane's coming down here in Florida, you go to the store and all the water's gone because everybody ran to get the water. I mean, it's just simple things like that, food and water and those kind of things. And this is in our society, and can you do without electric? Well, I go out hiking on the Appalachian Trail. You ain't got no electric out there. You have to learn how to do everything from a very primitive, out there in the middle of nowhere situation. I love that challenge. But a lot of people would die. Without electricity, they would die. They wouldn't know what to do. So, like I said, I'm not talking about preppers, just all these things that are going on. If we're in the end times, and there's going to be a little bit of challenge that goes on with that, be prayerful and be prepared now. And this is another comment that I wanted to say, and that is, how did we get that? Here we go. Expect the pressing, but look forward to the wine. Expect the pressing, but look forward to the wine. Now, I have some examples. I recently had a conversation with, many of you don't know Josie. She was a wonderful, godly woman that went to this church for years and years. And she's just one of those people you just loved her. She was so kind and so good, never had a bad word for anybody. She's just a wonderful, wonderful lady. And I was talking to her granddaughter the other day. We were reminiscing a little about her. But this woman was a wonderful, godly Christian. And other people would say, why in the world did those things happen to Josie? This woman, and she was like probably in her 60s, maybe in her 60s, and she had a stroke. And boy, I tell you, this woman was active. She worked at a daycare center. She drove her car. She helped everybody out. She had a stroke, and that really stopped a whole lot of her life. Now, I remember God just had it so that I was, being a former nurse, I was kind of instrumental in helping her. So I was at her house almost every day. And it was amazing because I was teaching here at our little private school that we had years ago. We had our school for 14 years. When she had her stroke, she got home from the hospital on the very first day of our 8-week break. So my 8-week break was spent with Josie, and what a privilege to help her. I was there for 8 to 10 hours a day, just at her bedside. They had a hospital bed there. I took care of all things that were needed, tried to show their family what to do, and just loved on her. And it was a God thing. I'm not talking about me, I'm patting myself on the back. It was a God thing. We're talking about that. Well, she ended up, it took a few years. I went over there to her home and helped her with her exercises and told her family kind of what to do. Lingo built that little railway on either side of the hallway so she could hold on to do her walking exercises. She got pretty good at getting around. She had a little brace on her leg. This arm never worked anymore, but she learned how to use one hand. She was back in the kitchen. She was cooking. She was happy. Things were going really well. And then she started to have some circulatory problems with her diabetes. And her good leg was amputated. Whoa. Talk about pressing a grape. Josie was a good, godly, wonderful woman. God wasn't punishing her, but in her suffering, God drew many souls to him. God changed her family. God opened opportunities for people to help her. I mean, it was like, in God's world, that was a blessing. In our viewpoint, it looked like a curse, but it wasn't. She was poured out wine. This woman was not bitter, was not angry. That was back before cell phones and everybody knew phone numbers. But this woman had everyone's phone number memorized. She knew all of them, because that's all she could do. She had her phone. She was a prayer warrior. I could call her at any point and say, Josie, so-and-so just got taken to the hospital. Will you call everybody? That was before we all had the computers and all the stuff. You can text everybody and all the stuff. She would then call everybody and pray with them, pray for them, or ask them to pray. Absolutely an amazing woman, right to the end. How powerful. I'm thinking of another lady, a friend of mine that I know through the Air Force Auxiliary. She had a diagnosis of breast cancer, and she lives in Orlando. And her treatment was at a place in Clearwater. So 3 days a week she would come and stay at my house, so that it'd be a shorter distance. She would drive herself. In the beginning, we were driving her, but she started just driving herself. She was able to do that. So she'd leave early in the morning and come back. She's been through all sorts of things. She's a wonderful woman who gives all sorts of her time and effort and energy to the Air Force Auxiliary and the cadet program and all the teaching. And the tumor that was there was gone. It was gone, and then something spread to her lung. Wow. So now she's back doing chemo, but it's less frequent, so she's not at the house or anything. But so many things have changed. People that have difficulty with each other, they look at that and they go, I guess my problems aren't as bad. You see, God will use it. And God knows upon whose shoulders he can put these things. God didn't put that on her, but because he didn't take it off, that means he's doing something with it. We always have to look higher than what's going on. And I look at one of my Vietnam veteran friends. He taught for 30 years in Hillsborough County school system. Wonderful man. They love him to pieces over at the high school. He worked with the football team and the baseball team as the announcer at their games. I mean, the guy just gave his heart to the community. And then he retired, and he and his wife were going to travel and see the grandkids, and this is going to be great. Bam, get a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. Whoa. Now, he fought through that. He was sick as a dog. He put up this good fight. And guess what? Unbelievably so, that cancer left. But all during that time, God was using that and drawing people, drawing him and his wife and others, they were very good godly Christians, drawing them even closer to the Lord, not further. All that was gone. And he recently got a notification that his spot in his lungs. So he's back under treatment again. Wow. And yet, if you truly have the nature of God inside of you, you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to be prayerful. There's going to be something inside of you. I can't explain to you what it is. But when I got that news about him, he's a wonderful, dear man and a wonderful, dear friend. I knew I could just count on God. God, we don't understand this. But this isn't breaking. It doesn't feel crushing. It hurts, but it's not crushing. And that's a difference. You can't buy that. You can't read that. You have to have the indwelling of the Spirit of God to get that end result. So many people read the Bible and go, oh, I can't forgive people like God says to. I can't love the unlovable. Yes, that is true. Your Adam nature cannot reach the levels that God indicates in the Scriptures. From Adam all the way up to Jesus, there was no one that could do that. Because they only ever had the Adam nature. It wasn't until after Jesus Christ, the indwelling of the Spirit of God, could you even live for a few moments of the day without sin, because the Spirit of God will not lead you to sin. God makes that clear. So our journey is to make sure we crucify that old Adam nature and its thoughts and its feelings and its desires, and let the God nature rule. That's when you're going to be able to forgive your mate. That's when you're going to be able to love the unlovable. That's when you're going to be able to have grace and mercy instead of condemnation and judgment. It goes on and on and on. So this grape squeezing is having a good production, but depends on who's squeezing the grape. Don't you squeeze each other's grapes. Don't you crush and demean each other. God is the only one who knows how to do this correctly. Let him do his good work. And just another thing, don't fear the squeezing or the times that we're in. I think I need the, I don't know why that's not going there. There you go. Don't fear the squeezing or the times we're in, or listening to too much news. When I was growing up, the TV first came out, so I didn't have a TV. There was a TV in my home when I was like 4 or 5 or something. But it didn't come on till later on in the afternoon, like 5 or something. And it was news. There were only 3 channels, and they had a half-hour news. That was it. The rest were precious little programs that were not full of violence. They were not full of foul language. They were not full of sexually explicit scenes. They were not full of the demeaning of men and women. They were not full of the garbage that's out there today. I mean, you turn on a soap opera today, it's like watching some of the pornographic stuff that would have been back in the 50s or something. It's unbelievable what has happened. But this 24-hour information cycle can be devastating. It can be very useful to find out what's going on beyond the borders of your street. But if you listen to it all the time, it's like, oh my gosh, this person's bad, that person's good, this thing is bad, that thing is good. You're listening to a perspective coming from the Adam nature in so much of the time. You need to be listening and hearing from a God nature. Otherwise, your whole heart is going to be pulverized. You're going to think, oh, this is never going to work. But it is going to work. Remember, in your suffering, in someone else's suffering, you may be the poured out wine for someone else. Your suffering, it might be the can opener that God uses to get into someone else's heart. That's why I want us to take a look at Psalm 27. Now I'm going to get there faster than you because I put a little marker there. Ha-ha. But anyways, I just wanted to read this to you. This is such a treasure in terms of what we're facing today, in terms of what God is doing, and in terms of being able to absolutely fearlessly trust God. Psalm 27, the first verse. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumbled and fell. Though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war rise against me, in spite of this, I shall be confident. One thing I have asked from the Lord that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to meditate in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. And now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me. And I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy, and I will sing. Yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. I think that describes what was happening within me when I heard some of this devastating news. When I heard the news that my brother was really on his deathbed. Shirley remembers this. I came in from my classroom when I got the call from my sister. If you want to see him, you need to come up here and fly up to Boston. I came in here and I got on I wept. I was so broken in that. But inside I wasn't broken. It's just all of the emotions and the humanness that we have, which is okay. But that deeper thing was inside. And it was also inside my brother. He's with the Lord now. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Be gracious to me and answer me. When thou didst say, seek my face, my heart said to thee, thy face, O Lord, I shall seek. Do not hide thy face from me. Do not turn thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Do not abandon me, nor forsake me, O God of my salvation. For my father and mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. Teach me thy ways, O Lord. Lead me in a level path because of my foes. Do not deliver me over to the desire of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen up against me, and such as breathe out violence. Verse 13, I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. And really, nothing but success ahead. Onward, Christian soldiers. I even made a copy of that slide. I hung up some signs around here for you to look at it. We need to be crying out, squeeze me, Lord, squeeze me. I don't want any of me at all. All that sour mold, I don't want it. Squeeze me, Lord. I want the purity of your life to come out of me, that they could drink the cup of wine by my actions, by my thoughts, by my words, by my deeds. We need to have that in each and every one of us. It's like the church is putting out acid on people. We need to be the sweet grape. We need to be that sweet juice, that sweet wine that they can consume, that they would want, that they would cherish, that they would thirst after the things of the Lord. So onward, onward, onward. Nothing but success. Onward, Christian soldiers. God bless you. We're completed there, Vanessa. Thank you.